Do you remember where you were when you watched every Super Bowl of your life? Well, I do, and the story takes us around the world and back. Think about where you were when you watched each of these games. Here is where I was when I watched every Super Bowl of my life so far. Now, I was born in 1997, and when I was just a few months old, Brett Favre won his first Super Bowl. I'll be honest, I don't remember it at all. I was a baby. But where was I for this? I was actually born with some birth complications. And no, it's not being a Chargers fan before you comment that joke. But these complications, not to get into too much information, led to me being in the hospital for the first couple months of my life. Just doing some math here. I'm pretty sure I was in the hospital for Brett Favre raising the Lombardi. I don't remember the next couple Super Bowls, but thankfully, because in 1998 and 1999, John Elway went back to back. I don't need to know what it was like to live in a world where the Broncos are back-to-back champs, just like the Chiefs are currently back-to-back champs. I was probably in an apartment with my parents, and then I don't really remember the rise of The Greatest Show on Turf, but I did see the movie, and it was a great movie, and I was alive when that happened in real life. Again, probably at my parents' apartment. The first Super Bowl that I remember, not the next year when Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl on his own miracle run, was in 2003. You guys remember that Super Bowl? And this is probably where I get most of my personality from, is that this is the first Super Bowl I can remember in my head. I remember all of my Raiders family members absolutely being tormented at that Super Bowl party when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers smoked Las Vegas. I was just a 5-year-old Raider hater. I just got something implanted in my heart that day for hating on the Raiders. In 2004 and 2005, the New England Patriots went back to back. Yes, I lived through a few of these repeat titles. I know the exact house, the exact city, the exact spot I was in for both of these Super Bowls. Just in my childhood home, vibing out as 10-year-old Mike Wood. 2006, Big Ben won the Super Bowl, and I was probably in the same spot. But I do remember the Devin Hester return in 2007 to open the game. I just remember him looking at the camera and how iconic it was. I thought that the Bears were going to win that game. I was already rooting against Peyton Manning as a 10-year-old. Even when he was on the Colts, why didn't I like Peyton Manning already? Was there something in my cold-blooded baby blue Chargers vein that told me even back then not to like Manning? And that Steelers, Cardinals, Super Bowl, man, that one I will never forget. One of my dad's best friends is a die-hard Steelers fan. You know who you are. Shout out to you. So we went to his house, I think, or maybe it was one of his friends or family gatherings. But it was just a house full of Steelers fans. And little old me was in the corner rooting for Larry Fitzgerald, rooting for the American underdog Kurt Warner still, rooting for the Arizona Cardinals to pull off that storyline against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just didn't have the balls to say it. I just stayed quiet. Now, of course, Antonio Holmes made that insane catch, and that was one of the first football moments that I watched that really made me go, holy shit. And I remember James Harrison, when he was taking that ball back at halftime, I don't think I've ever seen a Super Bowl house party go that crazy. Now, I'd eventually go to the Super Bowl one day and see a bunch of Eagles fans go absolutely bonkers at that game. But man, that is one of the moments that I remember when I think of crazy fan reactions in my life. The 2010 Super Bowl holds a special place in my heart. Someone I was very close to growing up, someone I looked at like a grandma. Favorite team was the Saints. And God rest her soul. We got to watch Super Bowl at her apartment. She's no longer with us. And it was a really calm Super Bowl, actually. I think maybe 5-7 people total were there. And again, I was rooting against Peyton Manning to win that Super Bowl. I wanted the Bounty Gate Saints to win. Of course, we didn't know Bounty Gate was about to happen, or Bounty Gate was even a thing that was happening in the moment. But maybe these two villains going at it started my villain arc. Because in 2011, I became an Aaron Rodgers fan. And I wouldn't call myself so much a fan anymore. I hate it when the GOATs and the greatest of sports get hated on so much. And Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys that fits into that category that's hated on way too much. But the last few years, I can't even defend him anymore at this point. But back then, he was doing that belt celebration every time he hit the end zone. Y'all remember that Packers team was so much fun to watch. Their defense, especially that pass rush with Clay Matthews. Rodgers completed it. Everyone was rooting against him except for me. And then the next year, Brady lost to the Giants again. And I'm pretty sure I was rooting for Brady to get revenge for not winning the time that they went undefeated. So I'm lumping these two Super Bowls together because even as a little tiny kid, I was rooting for Tom Brady to go undefeated. I wanted to see history get made. And again, time is just a flat circle and we go all the way flash forward to now. And I don't want to see the Chiefs win another game for the rest of time. But back then, as a naive little kid, I looked up to Tom Brady. And I always gravitated towards the players that everyone else hated. So you can imagine when the Baltimore Ravens made it all the way to the Super Bowl to play the San Francisco 49ers. And here in the state of California, with my family of Raiders/Niners fans, and friends that are all Raiders and Niners fans, I rooted for the Ravens. Also, this is the first Super Bowl that I remember having like a strong opinion on who was going to win. I was starting to kind of piece it together. I was about 14 years old here. I'd probably had just started playing football a year into my playing career. And I just understood what was going on in Baltimore and the special run that team was on. Especially as a teenage Chargers fan in a family of 49ers and Raiders fans. They talk so much crap down to me, even though for basically my whole life up until this time frame, both their teams sucked. Like, were absolute garbage. 2014 is another one that holds a special spot in my heart. My grandpa is still to this day one of the closest people I've ever been to, and he was a die-hard Peyton Manning fan. Like, followed Peyton Manning from the Colts to the Broncos. And this is the Super Bowl that Peyton Manning went down to the Hawks. And my grandpa was so sad, but I was so happy. It is one of my favorite Super Bowls of all time when we talk about the play on the field. Because I got to see Peyton Manning get smacked around by another hated team. And I shouldn't be smiling so much and laughing so much. This was the last Super Bowl my grandpa watched of his life. And RIP, Grandpa. He'd want me to bring up the fact that I wanted Peyton Manning to lose so much that day. It's ironically one of the last Super Bowls that I was at home for. The next Super Bowl, the LOB would go down and Brady would win another one when Malcolm Butler intercepted that pass that shouldn't have been thrown. Pete Carroll made that play call, right, Raiders fans? And Marshawn Lynch standing right next to him could have, you know, won the Super Bowl. And then a year later, it was so fitting, so full circle. Like I said, time is just a flat circle. Exactly 30 days before I left for boot camp, which my grandpa also served in the military almost 50 years before me. 1 month beforehand, Peyton Manning won his last Super Bowl in his last game. And again, I was rooting for the Carolina Panthers with all my heart. I wanted Cam Newton to win it. Everyone didn't like Cam Newton. Everyone was rooting for Peyton Manning, so I was not. Also, I was a Chargers fan that was actively living through the torture of being in Peyton Manning's division. A little taste of what was to come. No, Grandpa, if you're watching this today, I was not rooting for Peyton Manning to win that game. I wanted Cam Newton. I wanted the Carolina Panthers still. But this would be my last Super Bowl at home, as they say. I left for boot camp, and a year later, I was a completely different person, basically. I was now stationed in San Diego. And the first Super Bowl I watched while I was in the military was the 28-3 comeback. I mean, what a start of my adult life. I was stationed in San Diego at that time frame. I was blessed to go to San Diego for my training. And me and my classmates all huddled around a small TV in one of the guys' apartments who were married and got BAH earlier than us. And we watched Tom Brady go down by 28 points. No one in the room believed it was over. And then he came back from down 28 points. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And I just remember leaving that game thinking, is the NFL rigged? By the next year, I was literally sent across the world for the next Super Bowl. Before I get into it, please, one reminder, if you've watched the video this far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you never met me before, hi, I'm NFLMike, an NFL content creator that makes NFL content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and twice on Sundays. If you're an NFL fan, I know you will love the page. And then also like the video. It's the free way to support all of my content. Don't forget. All right, February of 2018. I was on my first deployment in the U.S. Navy. My station had been moved from San Diego to Tokyo, Japan. It was a culture shock to say the least, but I will say in this little pocket of this video, you don't learn anything in your life. You don't make any progress in your soul as a person unless you do hard things. Anyways, first deployment, stationed in Japan for the first couple of months. My ship went out and we just fortunately stopped in Guam on the day of the Super Bowl. So we did something that I don't recommend and something that's honestly pretty bad to admit to doing. We charged the taxpayers that day to go and watch the Super Bowl. Because you can't take a day off of work from the US Navy to watch the Super Bowl. We huddled around a small TV in a subway on the base in Guam, and like 100 sailors watched Nick Foles and Tom Brady both go for 500 yards back and forth. It was absolutely nuts. I saw the Philly special on that little TV. I was sitting front row. And all the while, all of our phones are blowing up because our bosses are trying to get us to come back to work. 2019, I was actually deployed. We had barely enough signal in the middle of the ocean. They took down the restrictions on my ship so we could watch the Patriots and Rams snooze us to sleep. Literally the most boring Super Bowl maybe of all time. And I watched it in maybe the most boring location of all time. On the inside of a ship. Every wall's painted gray. Every space looks the same. And there really isn't nothing special about it other than I got to watch a Super Bowl in the middle of the East China Sea. Which reminds me, comment your favorite and least favorite Super Bowl of all time and where you were when you watched each. I want to hear some interesting stories. I'll respond to every comment. By 2020, I was watching my last Super Bowl in the military. And I actually was home on leave, fortunately, to watch the Chiefs and 49ers go at it the first time. And it's crazy because I remember that this Super Bowl was just like days, weeks after Kobe Bryant's death. And that hit me so hard as an LA kid. I think this was the first time in my life I rooted for the 49ers to win. I already had started to grow my hate for Patrick Mahomes at this point before content even started. But little did I know that the content would start within the next year. Because before the next Super Bowl, I would get out of the military. I would move into my first apartment with my wife. I would be home back in my state of California. And I will have already started my TikTok journey and built a following up to around 25,000 followers. If you guys don't remember, I built that following going viral off of backing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl. No one believed in Tom Brady when he was 8-6 or whatever in the middle of the season, and I kept hitting the desk over and over again, pissing everyone off on the internet, and I was right. A year later, thanks to all of you watching this, we had built up a following of over 100,000 followers on TikTok. And now the other platforms were starting to grow and things were going off. The Super Bowl was happening in my hometown of LA. And I was rooting for the Rams to win it all. You see my boy OBJ? Ended up going to the Super Bowl experience, being a part of all the media coverage for the Super Bowl. It was so special to be so close to the Super Bowl. This was the closest I had gotten to the NFL in my content journey. And this Super Bowl inspired me. And this little pocket of time in my content career to take this full time within the next year, knowing the next Super Bowl was going to be in the next state over, that I was not going to be that close to the Super Bowl again without going in. And I got the chills right now. My antenna is buzzing. And it's thanks to God. It's thanks to all of you. By 2023, mostly off of my Raider hate videos, that same kid, I was in section 421. In Phoenix, Arizona, I went to the Super Bowl. Thank you to PFF who sponsored that trip at that time. They got me the ticket. It was one of the best memories of my life. I will never forget it. I don't care that I had to watch Patrick Mahomes win another one. It also is one of the greatest Super Bowls ever when you talk about the actual game. It ended in controversy, just how I'd want a Super Bowl that I go to end. The literal NFL conspiracy theorist was there to see the biggest NFL conspiracy unfold in person. That stadium itself is beautiful. Arizona Cardinals fans, you guys are lucky ones. That's coming from someone who enjoys SoFi Stadium. I think SoFi Stadium is the best stadium in the world. And I still really love that stadium. I was surrounded by Eagles fans. You guys have seen the clips. A year later, I was there in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl again. We did not go in. I got to watch it with my friend Joe Morley and a bunch of Raiders fans. We actually got kicked out of the Caesars Palace. We were trying to watch it in the Caesars Palace, and some guys in front of me were being rowdy. They got kicked out, right? The security guard starts being rude to me like I'm a part of their group. And you know me, I'm not a very calm person, as you can tell by watching this video even. I may have mouthed off to the security guard. And then he threw me out of Caesar's Palace. What a jerk. So we ended up having to watch it at the hotel that we were staying at and watch Patrick Mahomes win another Super Bowl. Honestly, this may be my least favorite Super Bowl of all time. Which brings me to this year. I wasn't in Las Vegas. I wasn't in Phoenix. I wasn't in New Orleans where the Super Bowl was taking place. I was right here in this office watching the Super Bowl with my wife. Again, comment your favorite and least favorite Super Bowls and where you were for each. I hope you guys enjoyed my Super Bowl life story. Like the video, subscribe to the channel before you forget. And where will I be for next year's Super Bowl, which is taking place in my home state again? And for the Super Bowl after that, which is taking place in my hometown. I don't know, but I'll be here for it. And I guess sooner rather than later, the ball definitely won't lie.
Bill Flames, I went Mike on the mic. With something brand new, one time for your mind. He gave you fair warning. Now it's time to smack him in the mouth with that raw sports talk from the town. Sweet chin music to your favorite sportscaster.